It's been 6 years since my goat Shinichiro Watanabe last directed a full anime series, but he's emerged from his cavern once again with Lazarus. In a not-too-distant future Earth, the entire world has become addicted to a miracle drug, Hapna, which has freed humanity from all sickness and pain. The drug's godlike creator, Dr. Skinner, had vanished after releasing it, but returns 3 years later to announce that in 30 days, everyone who's taken Hapna will die. So it's up to a task force of well, let's face it, a suicide squad of 5 weirdos, criminals, and delinquents to track down Skinner and force him to reverse the effects before the 30 days are up.
What, we some kinda...
Lazarus!
To be totally honest, I haven't fully made up my mind on this show as a whole yet. There is a feeling I can't quite shake that it's missing some element of charm, and Watanabe's laid-back episodic storytelling and a general blasé attitude from the characters do feel at odds with the show's race-against-the-clock conceit. Though it's possible, as Watanabe himself suggested in one interview, that it's an intentional contrast due to an atmosphere of apathy brought on by the miracle drug and inspired by real-life attitudes during the pandemic. So maybe that'll all come to a head at some point. And I will say, I really enjoyed the bit in episode 7 where he just lets you vibe with some fish for quite a long time. I think that's when the show finally clicked for me a little better. I'll reserve my judgment until the series is finished. But what it does have in spades is style. Kamasi Washington's jazz hip-hop fusion with an angelic twist is absolutely phenomenal. The ending sequence, directed by Mai Yoneyama and set to Lazarus by the Boo Radleys, is haunting in just the right way, and I gotta say, what a stroke of luck that they found a song from 1993 that both fits the vibe and has the same name as the show itself. And this prologue sequence, directed by Shingo Yamashita, could be a second opening all on its own. I'll be going more in depth on that sequence in my next video very soon, so subscribe for that if you dare. But clearly the star of the show are these elegant yet brutal action sequences. Watanabe's work often feels particularly grounded and realistic.
Or let's say go! Okay, wow!
But 3D environments, moving cameras, and a new level of physicality makes it feel like the action scenes in Lazarus are happening in a very real physical world with a camera operator doing their best to follow the action. Take this sequence from episode 8, for example. This cut by key animator Nizar Al-Sabah, apologies if I pronounced that wrong, has such clarity of movement, and the physics of this goon getting rotated downward at the shoulder by this arm lock move feels incredibly realized. Or this cut, whose key animator I unfortunately don't know. Even when Axel is doing an entirely unnecessary flip in the middle of a fight, it feels like I'm watching 2 real stunt people sparring. Right down to the way Sergei does this little hop to build up momentum to be able to throw Axel. There's of course a time and place for larger-than-life anime battles, people throwing buildings at each other and earth-shattering punches that are so powerful that they defy physics and have 2 separate impacts, but nothing makes you empathize with a character and fear for their safety like watching them interact and struggle with real-world physics. Even something as simple as this cut, where the 2 grapple towards a ledge. It's not often you get to see this type of grounded fight choreography in anime, and the dynamics of the fabric in their clothing, the desperation in Axel's claw grip on Sergei's sleeve. This feels like no other anime I've ever seen. And there's a very good reason for that, because these scenes were animated in a way that no other anime has ever done, really. Well, except one, sort of. We'll get to it. Lazarus certainly suffers a bit from comparison to Watanabe's 1998 classic Cowboy Bebop, and I'm sure if he saw this video somehow he would be extremely displeased that I immediately brought it up. But it's not my fault that it really begs to be compared, not just because of its shaggy-haired, twinkish and aloof protagonist with a passion for doing a little dance at the intersection of Muhammad Ali and an Irish jig before putting a crater in the middle of somebody's face, and who is also named after a long metal object, or because of this opening, which, I mean, just look at this and try to tell me with a straight face that I'm not supposed to be thinking about this. But also because both are 2 points on the same thread of artistic inspiration and borrowing that weaves a tangled web across the globe, which I will now attempt to very quickly untangle. Cowboy Bebop was popular in Japan, but nowhere near as monumental as it was in the US, where its syndication on Adult Swim in 2001 was arguably one of the biggest catalysts of anime's soaring popularity in the US over the past couple decades. That particular appeal to Western audiences is probably at least in part because Cowboy Bebop and his work in general tends to draw inspiration much more from cinematic sources from all over the globe rather than mainly from anime and manga. among others, film noir from Hollywood, spaghetti westerns from Italy/Hollywood, and most importantly for this context, John Woo's Gun Fu from Hong Kong. John Woo's films also heavily inspired the Wachowski sisters, who were filming The Matrix at the same time Cowboy Bebop was airing in Japan.
I know Kung Fu. Show me.
And it also inspired several other Matrix knockoffs.
I'm coming.
Watanabe then directed one segment of The Animatrix, an animated anthology spin-off? And Keanu Reeves' stunt double from The Matrix, Chad Stahelski, would go on to create his own action design company and then production company, eventually create the John Wick franchise and popularize a newer, more brutal, brawly version of the stylish, intricately choreographed action style that they had borrowed from Hong Kong. Watanabe loved the John Wick movies, and wanting to keep iterating with Lazarus rather than getting stuck in the past, called up Stahelski hoping to get some pointers on how he plans his action scenes or possibly have one of his people advise them. According to Watanabe, Stahelski said something along the lines of, "Nah, that noise. Cowboy Bebop is one of the biggest inspirations for my own work, and if we're gonna do this, I want to do it myself, and I want it to be a full-on partnership." So, starting from episode 2, though the style certainly does seem to have also influenced the first episode, Stahelski and his team worked extremely closely with the production and did pre-visualization for almost all the action sequences, designing and filming them fully in live action to be sent over and used as reference by the animators. This pre-visualization process is common in live action and CG productions, and it's a bit of a loose term, but generally refers to a preliminary version of an entire scene fully blocked out, filmed, and edited ahead of time, whether with simplified CGI or stand-in actors or stunt people, which is more detailed than a storyboard, but still not a fully realized final product. This is why these scenes look so unique. It's a blend of two different processes, which, when it's at its best, leaves you with a combination of the feeling of a grounded physical world from live-action Hollywood stunt work and the stylized 2D visual appeal of traditional animation. You didn't have to also bring along the stupid-ass generic Iron Man hologram computer interface thing from Hollywood too, though. I get it, it's futuristic, but can something really be futuristic if it felt dated 10 years ago?
I performed a pseudo-deconstruction on the multiple compression functions of the hash algorithm.
Layman's terms, please.
And the English please trope.
The network hasn't actually been breached.
Layman's terms, please.
Okay, to be fair, this time it's fully the dub's fault.
It's moving too fast.
I'm in.
What is you do? This process has actually been done one time before. Stahelski also did choreography and pre-vis for one single scene in the last episode of Ninja Kamui, but it really does not live up to the potential. They did it in 3D, which isn't inherently bad, but they didn't do nearly as good a job adapting it, so it mostly just feels floaty and anticlimactic. The most glaring example is this moment where the stuntman, who is, as far as I know, just a regular human, gets lifted up on a wire, and the animated version, which as far as I know is not just a regular human, follows it pretty much one-to-one, so it looks like he's also being lifted up by a wire. A cautionary tale, I guess. Let's take a look at this legendary scene by Yutaka Nakamura, one of the giants upon whose shoulders many of the incredible current action animators are standing. You know what, I just realized that makes it sound like he's not still around. He is. He's mostly been working on My Hero Academia, but he's also done some stuff on the likes of Freerun and Buddy Daddies? Okay. Anyway, one of the strongest elements here is the rhythm of the scene. It alternates between fast and slow movements, dazzling the eye, then giving a moment to readjust. Asimov kicks the table up at Spike in an instant, then it hangs in the air for a second, in front of his face, before Asimov charges back into the frame with explosive force, and the jump from this frame to this one sells the impact. They'll also frequently cut into an extreme close-up shot for an instant to narrow the scope to a single crucial strike. Watanabe, MAPPA's animators, and Stahelski are clearly very intentionally trying to preserve those elements even with this new workflow. Take this insanely stylish nightclub sequence from episode 4. They're leaning a little more heavily into the long take style inherited from Hong Kong martial arts movies that would rely on their performance physical skill to perform a scene in its entirety instead of cutting 3 times a second. But when Axel kicks the gun out of this dude's hand and into Doug's, it's a detail that could easily get lost in the mix. Stahelski recognizes recognizes this and cuts to a close-up. In the very next moment, the animators take their turn. In this case, Hiroyuki Aoyama changes the timing of this gun slap such that what was originally a pretty uniform arc now makes a huge jump right from this frame to this one, speeding it up and making the hit feel way stronger, just like that one I just pointed out in Bebop. Then Doug slows down and pauses for a second to prepare for the next attack. Or take a look at these 2 frames, then the same 2 frames from the reference footage. These little tweaks are all over the place. And I wish I could talk more about Christine's scenes specifically because they're some of the coolest bits in the whole show, they just didn't happen to provide as good examples. Let me know what stood out to you in the comments. Extremely liberal use of smears also have a major role to play. If I were to give one complaint, it would be that I think the action in Lazarus doesn't do as good a job at conveying character through movement. Here, every little detail of the fight portrays the difference in personality. Asimov charges angrily, leading with his face, while Spike is playful but calculating in every move he makes. They're clearly doing their best. Axel is ostentatious, always doing flips and little magic tricks. Christine is also acrobatic but more refined, while Doug is more straightforward and utilitarian. And they do always make sure to add in little in-between moments that show character, like this goofy little prance, but there's a certain line-level expression you just simply cannot get with this degree of naturalism. From time to time, Studio MAPPA's hectic patchwork of freelancers does show through in bizarre lapses in animation quality, strange compositing choices like this shot where these 2D people would look totally fine in this 3D environment if not for the camera trucking left and making them look like the warehouse full of cardboard cutouts of Willem Dafoe that I go to and sit in whenever I need to clear my mind, or peculiar scenes like this elevator fight where my first thought was that this was a lack of in-between frames disguised with some motion blur, but the level of detail in simpler in-between moments like the woman's hair here tell a very different story, so maybe it's just an attempt at the stylized staccato timing that's present in many other scenes and emphasizes the contrast between fast and slow, like we were just talking about, but in this case was just pushed way too far into slideshow territory. I genuinely cannot tell. But generally, the animators do a terrific job of taking the pre-vis material and making it their own while preserving the sense of physical space. Some people might have the initial reaction that this is sort of cheating, like rotoscoping, but I would wager that those people haven't done a whole lot of animation and realized how important it is to have good reference, at least if you're doing something at all naturalistic. In fact, many animators will even film their own custom reference footage, like how for this cut in Chainsaw Man, key animator Benjamin Foray filmed himself doing some high kicks as reference and to see how Kishibe's long coat would react to the motion, then exaggerated certain elements for the final shot. The main difference here is that the reference footage is way more extensive and being created by the people who are also choreographing the scene, in collaboration with directors and storyboard artists. Unlike with rotoscoping, where subtle differences in timing and shape language can leave you in an uncanny valley between live action and animation, here the previs is just being used as reference, so there are some cuts where the animators have followed it almost precisely, like this one, and plenty of others where it's merely a baseline and they've expanded on it or reconfigured the 2D shapes and motion to add more visual appeal. Notice how, in the start of this sequence, Stahelski's top choreographer, Jeremy Marinas, starts the scene coming toward the camera, but the animators have completely reworked the shot to be more of a flat plane where Axel moves left to right before this cut and continues moving left to right after it, such that the action is a little easier for your eye to follow. But despite the perspective change, they're clearly still using Marinas' footage as reference for how Axel's body should move, flinging his arms up to balance himself through the kick. The main differences being that they've let him hang in the air for a little longer, then really emphasized the speed of the kick with this crazy smear frame that's only on screen for 1/24th of a second, and made it so he now flies clean over the guy's head, which would have been more dangerous to film in live action. So, that's why these scenes look so unique. It's really part anime, part Hollywood action movie, a blend of visual styles of two media, and one that Watanabe, king of anime cultural exchange, is uniquely positioned to make use of. It's not inherently better or worse than any other production process, and at times it does also bring some of the downsides of live action stunts along with it, like that stunt performers can't actually kick each other in the face, so cuts like this one are positioned to hide the impact, which without the previs could have been shown in its full glory. I certainly wouldn't want all animation to be done like this, but it's really cool to see new combinations of techniques and exchange between different industries, especially when the result is greater than the sum of its parts, and is just this badass. Just please nobody let Chad get his grubby mitts on the franchising rights. I really don't want to start seeing ads for From the World of Lazarus. Skibbity toilet, I don't know, video over. If you want to help me continue making videos like this, consider supporting the channel on Patreon, and thank you so much to the people who already have and who all know Kung Fu. Smackintosh, Scorpiante, Katie L, Retrohime, Cyrilile, Lea Pico, Nutaf, Patrick Davison, Arborix, Ginger June, Dr. Yola McSwag, Grav G, Squid Goo, Joe, Fuggle Nugget, Annie, and Sammy Z, as well as all the other names you're seeing on the screen right now.